Hi, everyone. I'm Jonathan Wagner, VP of Brand of SOG, and thank you for joining us for tonight's webinar. While gear is important to us, we all know that a user's knowledge is central to their effective use of any tool and their ability to respond to a situation. In short, you're only as good as your training. It's this idea that we've based this series of webinars on. We hope that you'll find these valuable, and if you like what you see, let us know what other topics you'd like to see in future webinars. Tonight, we've got Emily Valentine, founder of Style Me Tactical, presenting on situational awareness. The recording from our last session with Jason Harper on the preparedness mindset is available for anyone who wants to watch it on our blog. And in a few weeks' time, emergency manager, former CIA officer and author Sarah Carlson is presenting on preparing and defining your EDC essentials. We'll send out a link to these in the chat session during tonight's presentation. In a moment, Matt Crawford will do a quick intro with Emily before her presentation. And since we're doing this live, we'll be doing a Q&A session at the end. You can send in questions at any time during the presentation by using the functionality in Zoom to do this. There should be like a little panel at the bottom, so you can just pop in a question and we'll try and get to it at the very end. And right now we've got a poll that's open, so please put your answer in there. It's in that same bar at the bottom. Emily and Matt are going to talk to that right at the beginning. We'll also have a couple of other polls during the presentation, so as Emily gets close to talking about those, we'll send those out, so we'll keep an eye out for them. And with that, I'll turn things over to Matt Crawford and Emily Valentine to take a deeper dive into tonight's subject, embracing situational awareness.
Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you, Emily, for joining us tonight. This is the second installation of Observations With, and I'm excited to jump right in. You come to us from Style Me Tactical blog, and I have read Style Me Tactical blog, although I don't think that I'm exactly your target audience. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the blog?
I had started Style Me Tactical as a way to journey my sort of journey and document me becoming self-reliant and how I would think about my personal safety and my own personal defense. And I also wanted a way to encourage and inspire other women to also start thinking about that, because I think it's very important for us women to think about personal safety, how we would defend ourselves, and also just kind of walking through those kind of what if, questions we might have. And so I really wanted to put all that together on a website and kind of document and help women at the same time. And I share a few kind of like a wide variety of lifestyle things in this, in this lifestyle, I should say, regarding, preparedness, personal safety, and also concealed carry. So I just, it's something that I'm very passionate about, and I just love, the community that's being built from the different women that are taking responsibility for their own safety.
Yeah, that sounds like, I'm guessing, some of the stuff we're going to hear tonight as you get into your webinar. Now, before you get in though, I just want to, maybe the last time, I think we got some votes coming in on the poll.
Oh, perfect.
Do you use headphones in public? If folks want to vote yes, no, or sometimes on that, because you're going to use that information.
Yeah, I'm actually going to talk about that here momentarily. So I want to know sort of what our results look like on this poll.
Okay, before we give you the results, I'm going to turn the Zoom keys over to you.
All right.
And away you go. I'm really looking forward to tonight's presentation.
Awesome, thank you. So, hey everyone, thank you so much for listening in. And I know we're going to be talking about situational awareness, and we aren't going to get too technical here. It's going to be more from a practical and foundational standpoint so that you can easily embrace and apply it to your everyday lives. So, let's talk about the poll question. I'm going to get into the presentation that I'm going to share. And so the poll question was, do you use headphones in public? So let me get some things up for you. All right. All right. So do we have results on this poll, Matt?
We do. So do you use headphones in public? 48% are saying no. 30% say yes, and 22% say sometimes. So just under half are no, and then kind of split between yes and sometimes.
Okay, that's a decent range. I think we're kind of covered everywhere with that. I kind of expected that. I'm glad to see that a lot of people answered, or most people answered no to that. And so if you answer no, I think that's awesome. You're ahead of the game. And if you answered sometimes or answered yes, I'm going to give you lots of things here to maybe help you reconsider that. And for me, because I live in a city environment, I see it all the time. People are wearing headphones while also keeping their head, buried into their phones, constantly looking down. It's, the way that we live these days. And so I want to know, or I want to really ask and talk about the kind of senses that using headphones actually inhibits, because it inherently inhibits multiple senses, but mainly that sense is sound, right? What we hear. And so if you can't hear what is happening around you, how will you be able to respond to it? So, and let's take that a level further. And so if you're engulfed and you're listening and you're engulfed in a new and exciting audiobook or podcast, whatever it is, on an important work call, your mindset isn't present. And that adds another level of distraction where you could easily miss what is happening around you, which could also be a potential threat. So as I mentioned, I live in a city environment. I actually live in downtown DC. I live in DC. I walk to work. I take public transportation. I kind of do it all. And so on my way to work one day, this was pre-pandemic, I noticed a girl. She was, had her head buried in her phone, and I watched her literally walk right into a pole. I kid you not. And I know I've heard people doing this, and I know that you guys have, if you probably remember that whole Pokemon Go craze where people were walking right into traffic because they were so consumed and oblivious with what was happening on their phone that they couldn't even see what they were doing. And I thought when I heard those reports that was absolutely absurd until I actually witnessed someone walking into the pole with my own two eyes. I couldn't believe that. And so I know here I'm talking about our phones, but this really matters today, especially because we are so dependent and so tied to these digital leashes. And so if you aren't aware of what is happening around you, you aren't situationally aware, which limits your ability to respond and opens yourself up to being a target. And so really, situational awareness is simply just that. It's being aware of your surroundings. And so when I say surroundings, it's the environment that you're in. So whether that be your work, your home, the store, the playground, basically wherever you live your lifestyle, because situational awareness needs to be practiced in every one of those environments, all the environments that you are in. And so the foundation of situational awareness starts with seeing and observing. So using your senses like sight, sound, and even smell to start taking in your environment. Looking at what your environment is telling you. What information is your environment telling you? What do you see? What do you hear? Do things seem off? What doesn't add up? You want to look for these cues that indicate something might be off, or something that might make you feel uncomfortable, something triggering like those spidey senses. I know we've had that feeling where, like the hairs kind of stand up on your back, like you want to listen to those. So what are some of the cues that you can look for, some of those indicators when you're out and you're trying to be situationally aware? Look at things like, what are they wearing? How are they acting? Are they fidgeting? Are they posturing in their stance? Look at what their hands are doing. All these things, they're indicators, these precursors that can help you identify the potential threat. And when we talk about looking at indicators, this can tell us whether someone or something is a threat, but how do we do that currently, like today, in today's climate? How are we supposed to look at these precursors if everyone is wearing a mask? And so some of those social cues are in our faces. We tell stories with our faces. Our faces can basically tell another person how we're feeling, what is kind of going through our head at that time. And so now that they're covered, not only can we not pick up on those cues, we also have a hard time identifying them. So this is why paying even closer attention to those indicators, that becomes even more important. And another thing you also want to know is your environment and what is not normal for that environment. So what do I mean by not normal? So let's say it's summertime, you see someone wearing a heavy jacket. Obviously that's their seem out of place, but does that necessarily mean that that person is a threat? Probably not, but it does deserve your extra attention. But also in the same note that people can also be dressed appropriately for where they're going, but also appear off. That's where looking at those social cues really comes into play. And if we can just talk about our environment for one more second. I can't tell you what is normal for your environment. Only you know that. And environments differ from city to city, store to store, and even within miles apart, environments can change. So for example, in my environment in downtown DC, we have homeless people that range from minding their own business to being aggressive. And aggressive, I mean that they will harass you at varying levels. So, and I'm going to have to presume that aggressive homeless people are probably not normal for you especially if you live in the suburbs. So for me, this is something I keep an eye out for when I'm out and about in public. And so within all of our varying environments, whether that's the home, the playground, work, wherever, you want to look for those cues, and those cues will also change based on those environments. And so something else that happens to me a lot living in the city is I'll be walking down the street, and then all of a sudden someone will come up. I'll feel someone walking behind me. Like it feels like they're gaining on me, like coming right up on my six. And my immediate thought is always, why are they all up on me? Like they're positioned directly behind me. So when I look to my left or my right, I can't see them, but I can sense that they're there. So that person coming up behind me, that's normal for my environment living in the city, but it also triggers my internal senses and heightens my awareness. So in this situation, there's a few things that I do to kind of handle something like that happens. And this is typically what I do. And so since I do live in the city, I have the added bonus of storefront windows where I can see the reflection of myself and anyone around me. So usually what I'll do is I'll give a quick glance into a window to kind of get a quick gauge on the people behind me, or just sort of my immediate surroundings. And then I usually always stop and pull over on the sidewalk. And I do this for two reasons. One, I want to see who it is. And two, I want to see what they do. And so who are they and what do they do? Do they slow down and wait around, kind of seeing what I'm doing? Or do they continue on their way? And since this is the city, usually it's just another person just making their way through the city. And even sometimes, just kind of depending on how I'm feeling in that situation, I'll turn around, look at that person and kind of give them that annoying look of, why are you walking so close to me? And these kind of things can be done anywhere, not just in the city. So they can be done in your environment, the mall, leaving the grocery store, anywhere. And for me personally, I would rather be in a heightened state of awareness, so I'm more ready to respond. So, going through different things in my head, thinking, why are they so close? Why are they staring? Why is this car slowing down? Why is that guy dressed in a parka in the middle of summer? Being aware of those types of things versus being in a mindset where I didn't even notice it. And so situational awareness is more than just identifying the shady character. It's also about putting yourself in the best position physically in your environment. And what I mean by physical, I mean, where are you physically positioned in your environment, like your body? So are you sitting at the back of a restaurant, or are you sitting near the entry where you can't see the exits, or you can't see what's happening behind you? If you are, do you think that's the best place for you to be? Because if your back is towards the door, are you going to be able to identify a potential threat coming in and also respond? Do you know where the exit and entry points are? And if you're in a crowd, for instance, are you right smack dab in the middle of it, or are you on a perimeter where you can easily get out and leave? And then also for, I know I don't personally own a vehicle, but for all of you that drive, where are you parking that car? Do you park in the back of a parking lot, or do you park in the front of a parking lot? Do you park under a light? Things like that need to be, considered when I'm talking about like your physical environment. And then let's just talk for a minute about what you're doing to invite a threat. And I'm not saying invite as in this is your fault, but if situational awareness is taking in the information to avoid a threat, what information are you giving out which could lead to a threat that you honestly want to avoid? So for instance, you geotag to social media, or you geotag on social media location for where you're at, right? These days we have this inclination to share every little detail of our life with the world, and we have social media to thank for that. So let's say you're out one night with the girls, you just posted a super cute photo of your group cheers, you tagged your besties, the restaurant, and your location. So what did you just do there? Post an innocent photo? Sure. Maybe to your friends and family, they're gonna hit the like button, they're gonna be like, oh, that looks like a fun night out. But what you really did was tell anyone who was following you, and then anyone else that might be interested in your activities, the place you are and who you're with, and that you're drinking, which ultimately inhibits all your senses. So you have to think about that. And trust me, I love a good cocktails cheers photo on social media, but if you must post, you do it after, when you're already home, and you don't need to tag the location. It's just not necessary. What I'm saying is what you share matters, and this also applies in just the everyday conversations you're having. So who are you talking to and what are you telling them? And not to say that every single person is bad out there, but you don't know in casual conversation sometimes what people can do with that information. So what other information are you giving out? And so let's talk about cars. I know this is something that a lot of people have, and this is something that a lot of people, I don't think, give a second thought to, because we're so proud and want to share so much of our lives, and we have no problem getting the stickers and throwing them on the back of our car and driving around and having a great time. But take a minute to think about some of those stickers you've seen on cars, because I know you guys have seen them all. We've got the stick figure families that basically tell people that, you know, I have 2 pets, I have kids and a lizard, or whatever it is, where your kids go to school, and then the parking zone passes for your work or your community, which then basically tell people where you live. And then what else? All the other interests you might have, firearms, fitness, the political party you side with. I mean, the list goes on. But that is just one aspect of giving someone pieces of information about you that they can then turn around, piece together to find you if they so choose to do harm to you. So that's just one of the things that you also need to think about in terms of giving out information. And then lastly, in terms of what you're giving out, how are you carrying yourself? What does your body language actually say? Does it say, I'm an easy target? Projecting confidence in the way you walk and your physical being goes a long way. And carrying yourself with that don't let mess with me attitude gets noticed. And, you know, criminals are looking for the soft targets. They want the least amount of resistance as possible. And someone that carries themselves confidently will be a liability for them. So make eye contact with them. That's a great way to project confidence. You don't have to stare at them for a long period of time. It's basically just to let them know, hey, I see you. And so all of this plays a factor in being able to identify and avoid a threat. And that threat can be anything you can imagine. And sadly, you kind of have to imagine the worst case scenario, because it could be something as a criminal just, you know, wanting your wallet, or it could be something more severe, you know, as someone looking for women and children to kidnap for human trafficking, to something as serious as life or death. I mean, it's not about this scary world, but you do have to understand that bad things do happen. And so being situationally aware is the first step in protecting yourself from those types of threats and any other types of threats that you could possibly think about, or things that you have heard or read about happening. It's really about taking ownership of your personal safety, something I strongly believe in. And you do this by training your brain to pay attention to many things subconsciously. And so let's say you've observed everything is off. What do you do next? How do you respond? So for instance, let's say you're leaving the store, and as you head to your vehicle, you notice someone lingering around it. This person could just be passing by. Maybe they dropped their keys, whatever. But let's say that's not the case. Let's say they're lingering too long, their body language is off, maybe they're peering into cars. what do you do? What action do you take next? That information you're taking in from what you're observing should dictate that. And so, of course, you can ignore the person and continue to your car, go straight to confront the person, maybe go back into the store, go ask for someone to walk you to your car. I mean, there are multiple ways that you can respond to that. And in my experience from talking to people, most head to their cars because they don't want to be inconvenienced with having to go back into the store, or they're busy and they need to get to the next place, because most people think that that person that's lingering by their car is harmless. But is that person harmless? Like, how do you know if that person is harmless? So if what you just saw, what you're seeing, that information you're taking in leads you to see something and feel something is off, why would you continue to your car and potentially into a dangerous situation? I get it. Most of us don't like to be inconvenienced. I don't like to be inconvenienced. We want the most direct way to do things. We want the easy way, right? Like, that's kind of our society, is like we want the easiest and quickest way to do things. But when it comes to our safety, the result of being inconvenienced can easily be the difference between life and death. So, as I mentioned, I live in the city, and I know that there are certain blocks to avoid. It's a complete inconvenience. Instead of going straight one block, I'm now going up, over, around. I'm adding 10, 15 minutes to wherever it is I was going and what I'm doing. But I do this because I don't want to put my risk of something happening. I want to avoid putting myself in that potential situation. And yes, those extra 10 minutes are inconvenient, but what is my reward for choosing to go a different route? That reward is my safety. And yes, I will never know 100% if the easy way I was going to produce a risk. But what I observed in that environment made me feel cautious enough that I didn't want to take that chance. And so the ability for a threat to close that distance happens quick. It happens within seconds from the time they decide that you're the target. So this is why being situationally aware is so important. It allows you to see what could be coming your way and avoid it. It buys you the time to quickly change your course and ultimately be ready to defend yourself if it comes to that. And so we use situational awareness to avoid a potential threat. So, but what if, let's say that it can't be avoided? Like, say you feel something coming at you, or there's a situation that is slowly developing, how to react. And remember, it doesn't actually have to be a targeted physical attack. This could be a stranger that has invaded your personal space. This could be somebody that you were at the store, you bumped into, or you're fighting over the last bag of M&Ms. But that situation can also escalate so quickly. So you must be ready to act with a few initial responses to show kind of your position and your dominance. So the first thing you definitely want to do is you want to create distance. You want to put space between you and the threat, because if you can see that and you can see something could potentially be happening, then you can do that. And the next thing is you want to use your voice. And ladies, this is especially important because I know that we are raised to be polite. We're raised to speak softly. Trust me, I know I speak softly generally, but in this case, this is where you need to assert your dominance using your voice. Don't be afraid to talk sternly. Don't be afraid to yell. This is if you're feeling threatened, this is what you need to do. And then using your hands, meaning positioning your hands in front of your body in a non-threatening way. So basically like you're gesturing for someone not to come any closer. This kind of positioning puts you in an advantage if the situation should escalate. And then also just keep in mind too, if you are going to use your hands, what's currently in your hands? Are you hands-free? If you can be. I know some of us have kids, so you're not always going to be hands-free, but those are some of the things that you need to think about. And then as a last resort, using whatever self-defense tools you might have. But also keeping in mind, if you are using self-defense tools, are they readily accessible on your person, in your car, in your home, wherever you may be? Can you get to those tools? And then also ensuring, just because you have those tools, are you training with those tools? Do you know how to use them in various situations and in various scenarios? And so personally, for me, I conceal carry wherever I'm legally allowed to. But I also carry a flashlight and a pocket knife as my normal EDC. And outside of that, I have other less lethal self-defense tools that I carry, mace, taser. And these are the tools that I train with and I'm ready to use. But I also understand, by deciding to carry these weapons and these tools, that there's a responsibility that goes along with it. And I understand that if I choose to use these tools in a defensive situation, there is responsibility, and I'm ready to do that if I need to, but it is a last resort. So then I want to ask and put this question out there is, are you confident in your abilities to protect and defend yourself? And I don't mean you'll fight with everything you have, because I'm sure you will. I know we all will if something were to happen, but I'm specifically here talking about your skill set. And even if you are confident in that ability to protect and defend yourself, why would you put yourself in that position? You want to avoid the fight, and defense tools are always the backup. They are the last resort. And so if you can prevent a situation from happening, then you should. I think learning to defend yourself is necessary, but really the first and most important step is being able to recognize a threat, because this is how you actually prevent it. So let's go back to the grocery store for a moment. So if you left the store and you were on your phone, you most likely were distracted, which means you would not have had the time to respond to the person lingering at your car, because you most likely didn't even see them. And so what you observe and see allows you to determine the course of action and how to respond appropriately. So your response may simply be to stay back and see what that person does, or you may be comfortable with your level of training to approach your vehicle and then possibly be confronted with a potential threat, because of course you don't really know what's going to happen if you do go to this person that's hanging out at your car, but you have to be ready for anything at that point. So there are so many what if scenarios that can be talked through, and it changes for each person, their skill level, personal factors, and also their environment. The key thing to remember is that you always want to be taking in the information from your environment so that you can be better prepared to respond and be proactive with your safety. And so as you go about your day, you're living your lifestyle, one of the things that you should be keeping at the forefront of your mind is your level of awareness. And so, as you all know by now, I live in DC, and I use public transportation and I walk to work. And so it's not too far, it's only, a few blocks for me to get to work, but there has been occasion where I've gone 2 blocks and all of a sudden I'm at the end of block 2, and I'm thinking to myself, how did I just get here? And so this is what I call brain fog. I wasn't completely present in the moment, and I basically was tuning my entire environment out. And I'm sure you guys have been in this situation in some form. We're all busy, we're commuting to work, we're kind of zombies before coffee sometimes. So all of a sudden you're in your car and you've gotten to work, or you're at the store and you're wondering, I don't really remember driving here. You basically turned into autopilot. You're comfortable in your surroundings, in your everyday routine. And in this situation of brain fog, there is zero level of awareness. And for me, when that has happened, that scares me. Like I get to that end of that block, and I really have to check myself and force myself to be present. And in that brain fog of those 2 blocks for me, I wasn't listening to anything. I wasn't on my phone. I was hands-free. You just kind of get into that tuned out zone. Is it something that you're so used to doing every single day? And so that level of awareness, and I guess really it's the lack of awareness, is known as living in the white. And it's a term that actually comes from Jeff Cooper, a retired Marine Corps Lieutenant Colonel. He developed 4 color codes of awareness, and I find them to be a very simple and effective way to practice situational awareness by identifying what level you live in. So there's white, yellow, orange, and red. And so before we get into this, I want to put up another poll. We're going to put up a poll because I want to know from you guys, what level of awareness do you think we should be living in? And so I would love it if you all could take a moment, pick one of the colors, select it from the poll box, and we'll give it a minute for you guys to answer the poll, and then we'll check the results and we'll discuss it. All right.
Emily, do you want some help with looking at the poll results, or can you see them?
Oh, perfect. No, I can see it. I couldn't figure
Okay,
out how
perfect.
I could.
Awesome.
All right. So, and everyone can see these poll results?
I'm not sure about that.
Okay, that's fine. I will talk about them. All right. So just in case you can't see the poll results. So the question I had asked, what level of awareness do you think we should be living in? And there were 4 colors: white, yellow, orange, and red. We got 2% for white, about 60% for yellow, 31% for orange, and 7% for red. This is actually more widespread than I thought it was going to be. So let's talk about these colors a bit more. So white, as in my previous example, you're completely unaware. You don't know what is happening around you, and you are comfortable, maybe even just outright oblivious. You don't want to be living in the white. And then for yellow, you are situationally aware. Observing what is happening around you, able to respond effectively. This is where we all should strive to live, and where 60% of you said this is where we're living, which is great. And orange, this is a heightened state of awareness. There's a potential that something could be going on. We're more prepared to make a decision and more prepared to act. And then red, the highest level of awareness, you're on your toes. You're ready to fight. Like there's an immediate threat, something is about to happen, and you need to act. Like living in the red is fine if there's an immediate situation, but you don't want to be living in the red for your everyday lifestyle. I want you guys always to be living in the yellow, observing, recognizing your environment and what's going on around you. And in our everyday lives, we will shift between these different states of awareness. Typically, it's white to yellow to orange and back down. And so if we go back to the grocery store or leaving the store story for a minute. So you're leaving the store and you notice a person at your car, you're living in the yellow. You notice this person isn't just passing by, they're lingering a little too long, something seems off. You've now shifted into a heightened state of awareness and you're now living in the orange. Turns out this person was just taking their sweet time getting into their car next to you. You're now back at yellow. So while we all must live in the yellow, we do sometimes live in the white. And where do you think that is? It's typically at home. So I'm going to share something that my husband and I do in our house, and judge all you want, but I think this is a fun little story. And I'd like to think that we started this because we were practicing our awareness, but it really was just kind of a way to get a good razz out of each other and a good laugh. So my husband and I have these sneak attacks we do to one another. I'll go into the bedroom to get something, do whatever, and he'll go hide in the corner or behind the door, wherever. And then as I'm coming out, of course, he jumps out and scares me. And we do this to each other. Yesterday, he got me really, really good. I was basically on the floor. But anyway, 70% of the time, we both jump from being scared. And obviously we get a good laugh. And every now and again, when I do jump, I tell them, be careful, because one day I'm going to punch you in the face and we're going to see who's laughing because I'm going to be ready. But like, what is really going on here, right? Like, why am I getting scared each time? Why is my reaction to jump versus defend? And that's because I'm living in the white. I'm not oblivious, but I'm comfortable because it's my house. I'm in my house where I feel safe, and you should feel that way. It's okay to be comfortable here when you're at your home, and it's okay to be in the white at your home, but you should be ready to move to a different level of awareness should you sense something happening. And I just want to say, because I think this happens a lot, you know, situational awareness does not mean being paranoid. While we all need to strive to live in the yellow, you also need to be observant while you're doing other things. You have to find the right level of awareness for the situation. And we're only human, and we cannot be running at the highest level, that red level. That constant influx of stress is not going to be good for the mind. It's not going to be good for the body. And honestly, our bodies weren't designed to operate like that all the time. But in the same token, we can't be running at the lowest level, like in oblivion, oblivious to everything. So living in the yellow allows us to dial up or dial down our levels of awareness as we need, depending on our environment and the situation. And especially today, you know, we have even more distractions pulling at us. We have to really make a conscious effort to practice situational awareness. And so let's talk about 3 things that you can do to start embracing situational awareness. 1, use your head, literally and physically. So observe what is happening around you. You know, calmly scan your surroundings. Look behind you, look to the left, look to the right. Are your sight lines blocked? You know where your entry and exit points are. As I mentioned earlier, make eye contact with people. Keeping your head up and making eye contact with people projects confidence and makes you less likely to target. And I know that eye contact might feel awkward, but you're not going to be staring at someone for a long time. You make eye contact, assert your presence, and then you break. It's basically letting them know that you see them. Just keep your head up, on a swivel, and be smart. And the next thing, minimize distractions, because you can't use your head if you're distracted. And so, of course, goes back to my beginning question, ditch the headphones. Don't do the call and walk. If you need to get on the phone, go into a store, coffee shop, pull off to the side, put your back against the wall, you know, any of those things, and take your call. Typically, most things can wait and don't need to be answered immediately. And if you must use headphones, like for instance, I do sometimes use headphones for directions, use earbuds and only keep one in at a time. That way you can still attempt to be aware of what's happening around you. And then I know a lot of women that do the call and walk. You know, you're walking alone, so you call your friend, you know, just your mom, whomever, thinking that that's safe, that person on the other end is going to be able to help you if there's a problem. No, that's a false sense of security. They can't help you. You are much better off being aware and prepared for yourself. Because as I said, criminals are looking for easy targets. So being on your phone or looking down, being distracted, that makes you a target. You want to make sure that you're projecting the confidence. And if you do have a distraction, you know, I know a lot of you have kids and you're wrangling the kids up, then do your best to manage your awareness so you can minimize the threat. And then lastly, trust your gut. You know, as I said earlier, those spidey senses, this applies to everything in life, not just situational awareness. And there's a reason they call our gut the second brain. It's there to nudge you. It's there to let you know a level of awareness you might be ignoring. So if something seems off, you need to trust it. Don't be afraid to listen to it. And in today's culture, this may seem difficult because we're so inclined to not offend anyone. But the potential of a stranger's hurt feelings does not take priority over your safety. And, you know, this day and age, we're all busier than ever. We're multitasking, we're juggling responsibilities. Everything and everyone is vying for our attention, but we need to make sure we're being present. We need to establish the mindset that threat exists and bad things do happen. And denial of this mindset is what's going to make you a likely target. Acceptance of this mindset means you're accepting the understanding that you need to take responsibility for your own safety. And so what I love about situational awareness is that it's free and it's for everyone. You don't have to buy any special tool because guess what? You already have it. You have a brain, you have eyes, you have ears. You have what you need to be situationally aware. Subconsciously, we are all doing this at some level, but we just need to sharpen the tools. And so one of the easiest ways to sharpen those tools is to just start practicing in your daily life. Live in the yellow. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And as Jason presented in episode 1, it's about having a prepared mindset. Start having that conversation with your spouse and kids. Start asking them questions. What would you do if? Walk through different scenarios with them. When you go out alone or as a family, start making observations about what you're seeing. Take note of the exits, take note of the people. Like start getting into that mindset of observing. Practicing these simple situational awareness drills will begin to train your mind to be aware of these things. And from there, you can move into different levels of defensive training to help with various ways to defend against a threat. And so you can't possibly see and prevent everything. You know, bad things do happen, but now, but knowing that you're taking the necessary steps, the actions, having a prepared mindset, practicing living in the yellow should give you the peace of mind that you're doing everything that you can. And I'm not trying to paint a bleak world, and maybe you don't want to come to DC after listening to this, but I promise it's not a bad place. Just trying to kind of paint the picture of some of the examples to help you understand the situations better. But it's understanding and accepting the reality that something could happen. And as I said, it's not about being paranoid, it's about being prepared. And in the end, you want to identify those precursors, those indicators, so that you can avoid that fight. It's really simple as that. And so I just want to take a moment to thank you all for joining. Again, I'm Emily from STAMI Tactical, and you can find lots of great information and resources on your own journey to being self-reliant on my website, stamitactical.com, and you can contact me through there and through social media. I am always happy to help, and I want to help you any way that I can, so don't hesitate to reach out to me. And I believe we're going to end with another poll and some Q&A.
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Emily. And the poll is up. How often are you practicing situational awareness? And hopefully people can jump in and vote on that. But also, there's a little Q&A down there on the right-hand side, and I see we have one. And we invite people to come on in and ask some questions, maybe some stuff that you went over, or maybe they're looking for a little more explanation. And and actually, right near the end, you touched on something, and I kind of wanted to bring this up too, because in our first observations with Jason Harper brought it up about the preparedness mindset, and he talked about having the talk with people. And you mentioned that there near the end of yours about sort of prepping your family about, asking them to sort of take a look around. But it tends sometimes to make people uncomfortable, having this like, hey, you got to be ready for this discussion.
Right.
I
think
just some tips and tricks maybe to ease into that conversation. How does that happen?
Right. To me, it's never too early to start talking to your children about just being prepared and safety. It's kind of one of those things that if you start building those habits early in life, it's something that they're going to continue throughout and start doing on a regular basis, and it may even become second nature. And I think it's important, not to obviously scare them, because a lot of, children, they do tend to think that, they're invincible, but it's about, coming to them from a loving and a concerned place, but also explaining to them that there are things that can happen, and just having that conversation and helping them to kind of understand what those things could happen, even in their own environment, and helping them to be prepared with that. And I think, the best way to go about that are to do the simple drills, just while you're out, start identifying, what you see, things that might seem off, or, when you're out, like count the exits. I think starting with those basic things as for children will kind of get ingrained into their muscle memory. So then as they get older, it's going to be something that they start doing. I think it's important that those conversations just happen at a younger age, because, things can happen, kids are being kidnapped and things like that. So it's just, criminals and bad things do not have an age limit. They're going to happen to everyone.
Yeah, that makes sense. And there's a fine line, like you said, between sort of implying that the boogeyman's behind every corner and just being
Right.
situationally aware. We've got a couple of questions rolling in, and I'm just going to start pounding them out.
Sure.
Does situational awareness extend beyond mitigating the risk associated from interactions with other people? I think the question there, I think, is your talk was a lot about how we interact with folks, throughout the day, because they obviously pose the biggest threat, maybe. But beyond that, how does situational awareness extend? Is it about weather and other,
Yeah, situational awareness, it's awareness really of, in our world, of your surroundings, but it's also awareness of really like what is happening, right? Taking in the information of what is happening. So when you're looking at specifically, a person, you're trying to gauge whether this could potentially be a threat. But in terms of, like you said, like weather or other things, like there are things that you can do to be prepared for that. But in order to be prepared for that, you also have to take that information in from what you're seeing in those different areas and those different types of environments, For instance, looking at like let's talk environmental factors, and not in terms so much of like where you live, like I talked about, but smoke, fire, things like that. Like those are indicators in an environment of a potential fire that's going to tell you that you need to get out, right? The hot doorknob, like those kinds of things are the things that you want to be aware of. That's more, I guess, tangible, so to speak, in terms of that type of risk or threat that's not necessarily a person.
Yeah, that makes sense. We got a question from Jonathan here. He says, Emily, can you turn your screen share off?
Oh,
so,
sorry.
but yeah, but another one, and this is a good one, and one that honestly I haven't had to think about. I don't think many of us have had to think about through what has been a crazy 2020. But traveling for work, some suggestions on hotels and situational awareness at a hotel.
Sure. That's a great question. So I noticed that here in DC, just where hotels are located, and seeing the tourists that kind of go to those hotels. And to me, I wonder why they pick those hotels, but I understand it's probably because they don't know. And so one of those ways I think that you can kind of help gauge where you need to be if you're selecting a hotel, and I know especially if it's for work, sometimes you don't have that luxury of choosing your hotel because it needs to be convenient to whatever professional engagement that you're working on. But some of the things that I like to look at and that I would suggest is always look at, like, I love TripAdvisor because you get honest reviews from people, and they kind of tell you like it is. They'll tell you the nitty gritty about every single hotel, but it also is going to they'll also talk to you about the kind of like where it's located. And then also, if you do go to a hotel that you're unsure of, I wouldn't be afraid to call the hotel and just ask them kind of like the kind of neighborhood that they're situated in, kind of what activities are there to do around the neighborhood, and then finding out, other things that might help you determine sort of if that is the area that you actually want to be in. So if you are familiar with the area a little bit, you can talk to locals. You can, when you get to the hotel, don't be afraid to ask the concierge a little bit more about the area. And also when you're there, you know, just visibly seeing sort of what information is that environment telling you. But also a few things like when you're choosing, or I guess, let's say you've checked into your hotel and you've already got your hotel, but choosing if where your actual room is located. So maybe being close to, you know, a fire exit, the staircase, I guess the floor, what floor you're on, you know, closer to the ground level versus being at top, you know, understanding where the emergency exits are, because, you know, every hotel has the little placard on the back of the door that tells you, you know, you are here, and it explains all those emergency exits. You know, get into your room and understand where your exits are and go check out where that exit actually is. You know, leave your room and go see where it is. And I like to take a photo of it and have it on my phone, just because maybe I'm in the hallway or something, you know, little things like that. And so, you know, setting yourself up in the hotel so you can respond the best as well in that situation, to give you like the quick access out, things like that.
Some interesting questions coming in. Here's one, and then we'll maybe get to the other one, because you touched on this a little bit. But what self-defense tool do you recommend for places where you can't carry a firearm? The question asked, she's, I think it's a she, maybe not. I'd like a self-defense tool that I can carry at college. That's a really good question.
Oh, that's a great question. So when it comes to self-defense tools, this gets a little bit tricky, because the one thing that you really have to kind of understand and know before you introduce a self-defense tool is what your local state and city laws are. Because, you know, I'll definitely give you my recommendations, but it goes without saying that, you know, what I recommend may not be allowed, one, at the college, but also in the school, or not school, but like in that city. So you definitely want to, you know, make sure you do that research. And especially in college, I know colleges have, you know, their code of conducts where they talk about what's allowed and what's not allowed. And so for me, you know, the one thing that I carry every single day, no matter what, all the time, and I'm pretty certain this is not illegal anywhere. If it is, then I'm not sure why, but is my flashlight. I carry a flashlight. I have it right here. I'll just quickly show you guys. Like, this is my little Surefire stiletto flashlight. I never leave home without this. I travel with it everywhere. It never leaves me. And I love this, especially for women, because it's slender. So you can stick it right in your waistband. It doesn't add any extra bulk, but it has, you know, this Surefire has 3 different lighting settings. So it goes from like low to like super, super bright. And what I love about this is this one is steel. And what I like to do is you can carry it in your hand, you know, like this. And it has like this back presser. I don't want to blind anyone, but where you can turn it on. But really what you can do with this as a self-defense tool. So not only using it as the obvious, lighting up pathways, you know, in your car, underneath, in your room, through hallways. But like, for instance, that situation I talked about where someone's coming up behind me, let's say it was nighttime and I was by myself, I could pull this out and I could shine it right in their face. I would use my voice to assert my dominance, but it would startle them. How bright this is will startle someone and temporarily, you know, blind them so that you've got a chance to get away. And so, you know, I think this is such a great tool. And another thing with this is when it's in your hand like this, it strengthens your fist. You know, women, you know, my hand isn't that strong, but with this, if I'm going to start hitting someone, I've got some extra punch in my fist now that's going to start doing some damage. So definitely flashlight. And I don't want to get too much into tools because Sarah's going to be talking about EDC stuff, but to address this question, and just to talking about what I carry is the flashlight, definitely for sure. And then I also always carry my SOG pocket knife. But, you know, just a quick note on pocket knives, you know, I use this as like EDC, meaning I'm opening boxes, I'm doing all kinds of things with this. This is not, I'm not relying on this as a self-defense tool. This is like my last resort. Like at least I have something if I needed to, because, you know, training with a knife, especially a pocket knife versus like a fixed blade, there's so many different types of training, and it's a specific kind of skill set of training that you have to be ready for. It's very different than, you know, a firearm. So just kind of wrapping this question up, because I'm starting to get long-winded, I know, is the flashlight. And then if your school allows it, check for mace. That's a great option. And then there are also what they call, like, I believe they're like cubitons, or for instance, like SOG does make a little like baton, which looks like a pen that you can also use as a striking tool. Those things are great options, but I have a huge list over on stalmytactical.com that you can check out. And whoever asked that question, email me or send me a DM on Instagram. We can, I'll be more than happy to continue this conversation and help you out.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like any questions that any of these viewers might have, they can just sort of contact
reach
you
out to me. I have no problem. Yeah,
and I know we've got
I'd love to talk to you guys.
some questions floating here that may need a little more explanation, and maybe you want to talk to offline, and that's be a great way for you to sort of answer some of these. We're going to bring in Jonathan here, though. I think, and really a great job. We're going to bring in Jonathan here and sort of talk about where we go from here with observations with, and some other opportunities for some seminars like this. But Emily, thanks very much.
Oh, thank you guys so much. I appreciate everyone's time tonight.
Thanks so much, Emily and Matt. That was really great. And I think a lot of people got a lot out of that. And also thanks to everyone for joining today and participating in tonight's webinar. We'll have a recording and a summary of this presentation live on the website in the next week. So if you found it useful, please share it with those that you also think will benefit of it. As mentioned earlier, we've got the webinar with Sarah Carlson on the 22nd of October. She'll be talking on preparing and defining your EDC essentials. I've sent the link in the chat. You can also find it on various blog pages that we've been running. But we hope you can make it. For now, that's it again. And thank you and good night.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. Bye.